Canterbury joins growing anger over the P&O Ferry's sackings. The move to get rid of hundreds of staff has sparked protests across the UK, backed by the church accusing the firm of ill-treating workers.
This is inhumane and totally unacceptable. They're treating human beings with little value.
The company had claimed the move was all down to money, but all may not be as it seems. We'll have the details also tonight. Russia escalates its attacks, hitting areas where many Ukrainians had sought sanctuary. President Putin claims all is going to plan as he holds a celebratory concert in Moscow. COVID cases continue their steady rise, with jab number 4 on the horizon for the vulnerable. And Rachel Blackmore races into the record books on a golden day at the Cheltenham races.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. The Archbishop of Canterbury has weighed into the row over the sackings of 800 P&O workers, calling it inhumane and unethical. The Most Reverend Justin Welby said yesterday's shock announcement was cynically timed as the world's attention is on Ukraine. Some of the sacked workers staged protests outside the ports today as the Transport Secretary said the government is reviewing contracts with P&O's owner. Grant Shapps also questioned whether the sackings, which were made without notice to staff, were legal. From Dover, here's our business editor, Joel Hills.
Seize the ships! Seize the ships!
At Port of Dover this morning, the fight back continued. Most of the 800 crew P&O has fired worked here. The mood today, a mixture of anger and anxiety.
They've got a little boy, do you know what I mean? They've got a 7-month-old baby, and this is what they do to us. It's terrible.
Yesterday morning, my son and daughter-in-law were getting up to get themselves a mortgage, get themselves a new house, so they can carry on with their lives. And then they got this video call.
In Liverpool, Hull and Larne, the unions mobilised and their outrage is shared. The Church of England has condemned P&O's decision to sack its crews on Teams.
This is inhumane and totally unacceptable. They're treating human beings with little value. And we're saying, as the church, we are saying humans are of value. We do not discard them.
Prince William has also been asked to intervene. Last month in Dubai, he met Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, the chief executive of DP World, which owns P&O. The latest set of accounts show that P&O Ferries Division Holdings Limited made a loss of £103 million in 2020, a year in which passenger traffic collapsed by 65%. The accounts were filed in September last year and show that P&O was still a going concern 6 months ago. They also reveal that DP World offered to lend P&O up to £160 million, but warned it would need more if things got worse. Pandemic restrictions have since eased, but fuel prices have surged. P&O says it understands the distress it caused, but insists it had no choice but to sack staff. The government disagrees.
Obviously, lawyers and others will be looking at it. I know the unions are very concerned to make sure that the actual laws have been followed here. It's not just about the letter of the law, it's also about common decency.
P&O plans to replace the crew it fired with freelance workers on less generous contracts. This recruitment agent in Scotland is supposed to be providing some of the temporary staff. Meanwhile, at Dover's Western Docks, 3 ferries sit at anchor. P&O says it will lose £1 million a day until it restarts its service. Some would argue the company is losing far more than that. Joel Hills, ITV News in Dover.
Well, as you mentioned, protests have happened all over the UK, including in Hull. And our correspondent Sarah Corker is there for us. And Sarah, it's been a dramatic 24 hours or so, hasn't it? What's the situation there like tonight?
That's right, and the Pride of Hull, the ferry behind me, is going nowhere. The crew has been sacked and hundreds of passengers are stranded either side of the North Sea. That's because there are no other ferry services between Hull and Rotterdam, and as you've heard, disruption is likely to last for several days. Now, yesterday there was something of a standoff here. The crew refused to leave the ferry. Today, protesters marched on the ferry terminal, demanding management come out and face them. Some people have worked at the firm for 20 years. 30 years, seafaring is all they know, and they feel utterly betrayed. Agency staff are being trained up at the moment to replace them, and P&O Ferries say these changes will save them 50% on crewing costs going forward. Changes, they say, are necessary to keep the business going. But remember, this is a company with a long history dating back to 1837, and sacked workers have said that they feel these aggressive tactics will tarnish the brand forever, and all of this has raised a debate about workers' rights here in the UK.
Yeah, Sarah, thanks very much. Well, let's return to Joel Hills, who's in Dover for us tonight. Joel, what next for P&O then?
Well, tonight, two government ministers have dispatched strongly worded letters. Unfortunately, they were dispatched to an executive who left P&O in December. But the point remains, the government here is clearly trying to intervene if it can. Kwasi Kwarteng and Grant Shapps speak of their anger and their disappointment, describe P&O's behaviour as appalling. The letters reveal that the government is reviewing its relationships both with P&O and DP World, its owner, which of course is heavily invested in the government's flagship Freeports policy. Grant Shapps says he'll ask the Marine and Coast Guard Agency to inspect the vessels like those sat behind me before they set sail again. He wants to make sure that the crews are drilled and that all the safety procedures are followed to the law. He warns the company their behaviour may have fundamentally changed the way the public feels about P&O. UK law does make it possible for companies to fire staff and recruit agency labour. They have to follow correct procedure. The government doesn't think that P&O has done in this instance. P&O, of course, says that this is a desperate move, but a necessary one to guarantee the company's survival.
OK, Joel, thanks very much. To Ukraine now, where Russian forces have widened their assault, launching a missile strike on an airport close to the western city Lviv. It's an area previously considered as relatively safe. It came on the day President Putin held a huge patriotic rally in Moscow, marking the 8th anniversary of the seizing of Crimea. He told the crowd that Russia hasn't had such unity for a long time. Meanwhile, in the besieged Ukrainian city of Mariupol, hundreds of civilians are still buried under the rubble of a theatre hit by a Russian airstrike. Geraint Vincent reports.
They've been waiting in Lviv for the war to come to them. And this morning it did. Cruise missiles landed near an airfield at the edge of the city. Black smoke spread across the sky, and on the streets below, the atmosphere had changed. Lviv said its governor has been a humanitarian hub for 200,000 people fleeing the fighting in the east. This attack shows that Russia is not at war with the Ukrainian army, he said, but with civilians. Lviv had been thought of, until this morning at least, as safe haven because of where it is, in the far west of Ukraine, just 40 miles from the border with Poland.
This was an attack on a facility which maintains and repairs Ukrainian aircraft, but it was also another demonstration by the Russian military that there is no safe place in Ukraine and nowhere beyond its reach.
This part of the country has been an entry point for military aid from the West, but the Russian missiles arrived here with a warning from Russia's foreign minister.
Any cargo moving into Ukrainian territory which we would believe is carrying weapons, would be a fair game.
In Moscow, in a football stadium, a show of support for Russia's war. There were Olympic medalists here, but no doubt about the headline act. Vladimir Putin told an apparently adoring crowd that Russia had not known unity like this for a long time. His forces' assault on Ukraine's eastern cities, meanwhile, is as intense as it's ever been. A huge fire broke out in a market in Kharkiv after it was shelled. There were no casualties here, but Russia's generals say the noose is tightening around Mariupol, a city still under siege, where the operation to rescue people who were sheltering in the basement of a theatre when it was bombed continues. An aggressive war always has a high price for the aggressor, says Ukraine's president. But at the moment it's his people bearing much of the human cost. Back in Lviv, they have laid out 109 prams and pushchairs, one for each of the children killed in this war so far. Geraint Vincent, ITV News, Western Ukraine.
Attacks have also continued on the capital, Kiev. Another residential block has been hit. The city's administration said today that 60 civilians have been killed inside the capital since the start of the invasion, including 4 children. From Kiev, here's our global security editor, Rohit Kachru.
It is unbelievable for everyone. And yet, this is the norm. They heard the strike, and when they emerged from their homes, here's what they saw. The flats were not spared, nor were schools and nurseries. The places where families lived, where children learned. Many were injured. One person was killed. They'd stepped outside just after the curfew ended.
Какая-то ракета, наверное, я не знаю, что там попал. Ну, как бы меня ударной волной отнесло, стекла посыпались, все. Я не знаю. Я не знаю. Я бы убила Путина сейчас.
In fact, everywhere we went, Putin's name was brought up.
Нет слов, понимаете?
Я бы этого Путина задушил бы вот этими руками.
Понимаете?
The skyline in Kyiv tells 2 stories. Look one way and you see the past, but on the horizon things look more bleak. Today, a Western official said Russia has enough firepower to carry out an intense bombardment for weeks, with Putin pursuing a strategy of attrition.
What are his tactics? What's his objective for Kiev?
The Russians have plans to occupy Kiev already 3 weeks ago. But our army destroyed whole plans of Russians. And Russians, I am, as mayor, told to you to talk to everyone. Never ever Russians to come to our city. Better we die if give the city to Russians.
But some of this country's allies believe Russia's plan is to keep doing this, to wear down Ukraine's army and its people. Rohit Kachru, ITV News, Kyiv.
Let's talk now to Rohit, who's still in Kyiv, because in the past 5 days, it feels as though they've made very little progress on the ground compared to the couple of weeks previously. So what do you think the Russian endgame is here, Rohit?
Well, that conversation between President Xi of China and President Biden of the United States offers some hope because Xi, who is Putin's closest ally, although he didn't denounce Russia's actions, he said conflict isn't in anyone's interest. So that leads us to a conversation that we had with a senior Western official this afternoon, who said that although Russia is falling way behind their own expectations, their endgame, their intentions haven't changed, which was perhaps more worrying. They added that there is a finite supply of precision weapons available to the Russians, which means that they are now more likely to start using indiscriminate attacks, so-called dumb bombs, which means that things may well slow down, but the number of civilian casualties in the very near future may well increase.
OK, Rohit, thank you. OK, there's plenty more still to come on the ITV Evening News, including Could another booster jab allay anxieties and slow the spread of COVID? And riding into the record books, Rachel Blackmore caps off a remarkable year with victory in Cheltenham's Gold Cup race.
The crowd returning here to Cheltenham have just witnessed a moment of history, the first woman to ride a Gold Cup winner.
And we'll have those stories and so much more after the break.
Rewrite the rules with the epic new Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra on EE, the UK's best network. And get Netflix as part of your full works plan. Plus, claim a pair of Galaxy Buds Pro. But wait, we're rewriting the rules here. Save up to £336 when you trade in your old Samsung device. So what are you waiting for? Get more bang for your buck with the new Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra on EE.
With NFU Mutual Car Insurance, your no-claims discount is protected if you're hit by an uninsured driver. To switch to quality car insurance, call now or search NFU Mutual.
This isn't just any deal, it's the real deal at SCS, bringing real value to sofas like this, down to only $549. And carpets like this, half price at $10.99 a square metre with free fitting. Don't miss the real deal on this sofa, $299 with an incredible half price saving at SCS.
Everyone's faced with things going up these days, even us. But you'll find amazing value every day at Aldi. Even when things are going up everywhere, you could still save over £35 on this big family shop. So don't change your lifestyle, change your supermarket. Pop to Aldi, officially which cheapest supermarket.
The ITV Win Wall of Fame, the home of winners. In the last 12 months, we've made over 67,000 cash prize winners by giving away over £8 million. Not to mention the range of prizes up for grabs. Look what past winner Penny had to say.
Won a car and it's lovely. Something that you never ever thought would ever happen. But it did.
And that's just one of the thousands of winners, with more to come. Now that I say that, I think it's time to get a bigger haul. To find out how you could become a winner, search ITV Win today.
A delivery driver finds a lift is out of order.
What?
Sorry, mate.
Looks heavy.
The driver has to hump a large, awkward, heavy package up to the 10th floor of a tower block.
Delivery.
This says block 2. It's over there, mate.
Should have gone to Specsavers. Specsavers.
It's a beautiful.
Belvita. Positive energy starts here.
It's okay to ask. It's okay not to know. After all, it's not our questions that define us. It's what we do with the answers. Because the more we learn, the closer we get.
Wouldn't it be lovely if you could hide an Easter egg anywhere in the world for someone you love? It could be that place where you cheered your hearts out, or where you've both always dreamt of going back to. Hide an Easter egg for someone you love. Search Cadbury Worldwide Hide.
Welcome back. New figures show that COVID cases are steadily rising across most of the UK. In fact, levels in Scotland have hit another record high. In England, the picture is less clear as there's been a big fall in testing. And Wales is seeing levels similar to those at the start of February, but Northern Ireland may be seeing a slight fall. The rise is being fuelled by a mutation of the Omicron variant. And as our North of England reporter Hannah Miller explains, some hospitals are worried it could put them under pressure.
As the country heads into its first lockdown-free spring since the pandemic began, COVID too is having a revival.
What's the bird eating?
And for people like Constance, who has a suppressed immune system, higher case rates make her worry whenever she leaves home.
I have definitely curtailed where I visit, when I visit. I think we're getting forgotten. I'm a young mum with a family that depends on me. You know, I matter.
In Scotland, COVID infections have hit a new record high, with 1 in 14 people estimated to have had the virus in the past week. In England, it was 1 in 20, and in Wales, 1 in 30, with the picture in Northern Ireland described as uncertain. That rise in cases is already impacting on hospitals, where more than 14,500 people are now receiving medical care. And in Somerset, doctors warn that already poses a challenge.
We see pressures due to the numbers of patients that are currently admitted, both with COVID and with other conditions, and it is a challenge to make sure our infection control is as precise and all-encompassing as possible.
But thanks to the vaccine, the number of people getting severe disease or dying is much lower than it was. And ITV News understands that from next week, vaccine centres like this will be offering a 4th dose of the jab to people over the age of 75, those living in care homes, and those who are vulnerable. Some experts are warning, though, that now isn't the time to stop offering free COVID tests for all, which are due to be scrapped in England in 2 weeks' time.
I think it's difficult. We didn't want to be where we were now. If you look back a few months ago, it seemed reasonable to scale down the testing. I'm not saying we should test at the level that we always have, but I think removing all asymptomatic testing is challenging at the current time.
And the question is how much we're willing to allow COVID to spread as people continue to enjoy their new lease of life. Hannah Miller, ITV News.
The Met Police officer who kidnapped and murdered Zara Ratcliff has been charged with 4 counts of indecent exposure. Wayne Couzens is accused of carrying out the offences earlier this year. Well, Sejal Karia is at Scotland Yard for us tonight. Sejal, what more can he tell us?
Charlene, it's alleged these offences took place shortly before Zara Ratcliff's abduction in January and February last year, when Wayne Couzens is accused of indecently exposing himself on 4 separate occasions in Swanley in Kent while he was serving as a Metropolitan Police officer. He is currently in jail serving a whole life tariff for the abduction, rape and murder of Zara last March. Her body was found hidden in woodland in Kent days after she was reported missing. The independent police watchdog is investigating Couzens after it emerged one of the indecent exposure accusations was made just 72 hours before he'd abducted Zara. Wayne Couzens is due before Westminster Magistrates Court in April.
Sejal, thank you. A schoolgirl who was strip-searched by police officers is taking civil action against her school and the Met Police. The 15-year-old black pupil was pulled out of an exam after she was wrongly suspected of carrying cannabis. As subsequent safeguarding reports concluded that the search should never have happened. In a statement via her lawyers, she said she hopes to ensure this never happens to any other child. A murderer described as devil-obsessed has been jailed for life after killing a woman and attacking 2 others in North London. Brian Sengendo was convicted of 7 charges, including the murder of 44-year-old Teresia Gordon. The trial of Bristol Rovers manager Joey Barton, seen here on the right, over allegations he assaulted his wife, has been adjourned after she wrote a letter defending him. In the letter to prosecutors, Mrs. Barton said she was injured accidentally when friends intervened in the argument. And CCTV footage has captured the moment a drive-by shooting took place near a primary school in Manchester. Police were called after an innocent bystander reported that his car had been struck by a stray bullet during the shootout back in January 2021. The 3 men involved were sentenced to a total of 17 years behind bars. History was made today in the most prestigious national hunt race of all. Rachel Blackmore became the first female jockey to win the Cheltenham Gold Cup, and she did so in style, taking a plus tard to a clear victory. It capped an incredible 12 months for the Irish star, who's now won all three of jump racing's biggest events. Ben Chapman watched her ride into the record books.
They were promised a race where dreams come true. As the crowds arrived once more at Cheltenham, they certainly couldn't have wished for a better day.
Anybody want to wager?
Many of them betting on history being made in the spring sunshine.
Go on, Rachel! Go on, Rachel!
After winning the Grand National last year, Rachel Blackmore with her horse A Plus Tard, aiming to become the first female jockey to triumph in the Gold Cup. This former winner among her many fans.
She's brilliant for the game. She lets her performances do the talking. She doesn't talk the talk, she walks the walk. And in sport, not everyone has that. She's got a lot of class, and we're very lucky to have her in jump racing.
And a first timer for the Boodles Cheltenham Gold Cup.
A year ago, Blackmore finished an agonising second, and this race was billed as a rematch, only this time with crowds allowed back to watch it. And so it proved.
Blue tard for Rachel Blackmore, draws alongside of the last and jumps to the lead.
Blackmore eventually surging ahead at the last fence, winning in the end with plenty of room to spare.
Another big race for Rachel Blackmore.
Her new superstar status secured.
The crowd returning here to Cheltenham have just witnessed a moment of history. The first woman to ride a Gold Cup winner.
But afterwards, she was characteristically modest.
Oh, I'm just, I wish I had something better to say right now. I just can't. You know, you have all these plans about how things are going to work out, and, you know, racing doesn't let that happen a lot of the time, and for some reason it's happened for me today.
It may have been a blessing with the return of the crowds that she had to wait until this year to do it. Thousands able to watch the Princess Royal crowned the new queen of the racecourse. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Cheltenham.
Well done, Rachel. Right, don't forget you can stay up to date on what's happening on our website. But here's what's coming up in the next half an hour before Emmerdale. The rural communities cut off as bus routes are wiped off the map. That's in a moment.
Well, this is the last bus going through Dimmock to Ledbury. It's very emotional at the moment. We're the little people in Dimmock who nobody cares about.
As British Sign Language gets a legal boost, we meet the Wynne family who tell us about parenting without sound. Just 2 hours to go till the Chelsea sale deadline. We'll have the latest from the club. How the conflict in Ukraine has prompted a rethink here about which cities we should couple with.
And we've had plenty of spring-like sunshine today and blue skies, but will it last into the weekend? I'll have the full details.
But first, ITV News has learned that hundreds of bus services are set to be cut across the UK within weeks. That's despite routes being protected by the governments during the pandemic. That financial support has been extended to October, but the problems are far from over. And it's leaving many communities, especially those in rural areas, at risk of isolation. Our consumer editor, Chris Troy, has this special report on the bus services reaching the end of the road.
Gloucestershire, where a transport link that's been around for generations is about to end.
It's supposed to be our timetable. Obviously it's blank, so we're just stuck here basically.
No timetable and soon no bus. A service with history stretching back 70 years in this village is going.
The loss of this bus has led you to a big life decision. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm going to have to move.
You're going to have to move?
If the buses aren't reinstated, I will have to move.
And why is that?
Because I need to be by the doctors, because I'm on warfarin, which needs monitoring weekly.
New analysis for this programme shows 309 bus routes across the UK will be cancelled by their current operators in April. And one word is used a lot: isolation.
For us, it's a big loss because we're going to be quite isolated.
I'm partially sighted. I've never been able to drive. Yeah, we are going to be isolated, yeah.
I'm now in a situation where I'm stuck and have no idea what to do because I can't get anywhere for college. It's caused me so much stress because obviously it's so important and college is mandatory and it's going to shape what I do for the future.
As night falls, I'm waiting for the last bus, not of the day, but forever, as far as this cherished Gloucestershire service is concerned.
Well, this is the last bus going through Dimmock to Ledbury. It's very emotional at the moment. We're the little people in Dimmock who nobody cares about, just pushed to one side.
The bus company, Stagecoach, told us it hasn't covered operating costs on this route for decades. The pandemic made things worse.
Operators work really hard to keep services viable and do all they can before they take any kind of difficult decision to cut a service. And what we need to hear now from government is a really, really strong pro-public transport, pro-bus message, telling people that it is safe to get back on the bus.
Government told us it provided £1.7 billion to support timetables through the pandemic and will put in another £3 billion by 2025. But we found that it's not only rural communities that are being impacted by disappearing services. People in this part of Newcastle are losing their only direct link with the town centre.
People, I mean, we're all in our 70s. We need the transport here now to take us to the city centre. Surely that's not asking a lot.
Well, I'm angry. I'm angry because obviously I've still got to get to see my mum. She's 84 in November and she needs looked after. She's not very well.
This vital link will be cut within 2 weeks, and I'm riding on it with Audrey Warby as we go to challenge the local councillor in charge of transport.
Why should we live now like hermits because we can't go anywhere? I'm sure at 75-year-old I'm entitled to get on a bus and go into town.
You know, local authorities, because we are strapped for cash, to be able to find the additional money to fund buses and to subsidise bus companies just isn't possible.
That's got to be wrong. It's got to be morally wrong to treat people in such a way. We're entitled to a bus service.
The only solution to the problem is that we have to find public money to give to private companies for them to continue to run buses.
Even though local authorities here boosted transport funding by £4 million, the councillor can't help Audrey, and the bus company, Go North East, told us serving her stop isn't viable. The section of route isn't well used.
Oh, I just think it's an insult to us.
Throughout my journey, nobody has questioned how essential buses are to local communities. And yet our new findings show that across the country, hundreds of services will be lost within weeks.
The reality is, though, Chris, is that many more routes could end up going down this path, couldn't they?
Absolutely. And who would have thought that the issue of buses could be that emotional? But people and their lives really are deeply affected. A lot of this kind of set in with the pandemic, passenger numbers collapsed. The only way a lot of routes could keep going is with government support. Now, that was meant to end on April the 5th, which would have led to many more buses disappearing, a whole bigger scale of problem. The government has actually extended that emergency funding now through until October. But of course, that doesn't really settle the long-term problems of funding and uncertainty in communities like that, which is one of the reasons why the bus industry is now asking government to support a big national campaign to get people back on the bus, because this is not just about finance, it's all about our behaviour. Will people get back on buses, or will there be much more working from home in future?
Indeed, Chris, thanks very much. OK, let's get an update on what's making the news tonight. Pressure is growing on the government to act after P&O Ferry's sudden sacking of hundreds of workers. The company have defended their decision, describing it as difficult and a last resort. President Putin has addressed crowds at a rally at a stadium in Moscow where he praised troops fighting in Ukraine. And it's a nervous wait for Chelsea fans as the deadline looms for the sale of the club. That's at 9 p.m. We'll have more on that in just a moment. Officials in Texas say a 13-year-old boy was driving a pickup truck which crashed, killing 9 people. The pickup swerved into the opposite lane of a highway and hit a van carrying members of a university golf team. 6 golfers and their coach were among those killed, along with the 13-year-old boy. Neil Connery has more.
The remains of a pickup truck which crashed head-on into a van carrying university athletes in Texas, killing 9 people in total. The driver was just 13 years old. 6 university golfers and their coach died in the crash. The young teenage pickup truck driver and a passenger were also killed. The University of the Southwest, where the students came from, say they're in shock.
9 occupants from USW in the bus. 7 of whom did not survive the crash are deceased. 2 students remaining did survive and are receiving medical treatment in Lubbock.
Among the victims, Jackson Zinn, who was just 22. At the restaurant where he worked, they gathered to remember the promising golfer. His girlfriend spoke of their loss.
He loved golf. He loved his whole golf family. He was the kindest. He wanted to be everybody's friend. He was everybody's friend.
As police investigators continue their work, they're focusing their attention on a pickup truck tyre.
The left front tyre, which was a spare tyre, had failed, which resulted in the vehicle pulling hard to the left and crossing into the opposing lane.
As they mourn those killed, their thoughts are also with the 2 surviving students who remain in hospital. Neil Connery, ITV News.
Brexit Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg has dismissed public anger over illegal lockdown parties in Downing Street and called them fluff. Speaking at the Conservative Spring Conference in Blackpool, he said events in Ukraine showed that Partygate was not a serious matter. Well, our political reporter Shihab Khan is in Blackpool for us. And Shihab, Mr Rees-Mogg is presumably hoping people will forget about the scandal.
Yeah, I think it's partly that, and it's partly an indication from Jacob Rees-Mogg that he thinks that the news agenda and the pressure has subsided somewhat on the Prime Minister because the focus has been on Ukraine. The fact that a senior Conservative MP is even able to say this is an indication of that. This happening a few months ago when there were calls for the Prime Minister to resign would have been inconceivable. Now, Jacob Rees-Mogg was speaking here in Blackpool today. Have a listen to exactly what he had to say.
All that nonsense is shown for the trivial nature of it, and that we are now looking at serious, difficult decisions having been made. I mean, I'd say the same Partygate, that all of that is shown up for the disproportionate fluff of politics that it was, rather than something of fundamental seriousness about the safety of the world and about the established global order.
Now, some would argue that Jacob Rees-Mogg there hasn't understood the seriousness of the issue and the fact that those at the heart of government appeared not to be following the rules at a time when we were in lockdown and people were in hospital passing away from COVID. Now, the party chairman, Oliver Dowden, who is also here today, made the point that it's important that those who write the rules actually follow them. So it's clearly not the tone that the government wants to take. And the idea that the pressure that was on the Prime Minister has stopped is ultimately not true, because when the police investigation concludes, that pressure could reignite.
OK, Shihab, thank you. Zara Ratcliff has shared a picture of herself making up for lost time with her family following her return home from Iran. She made pizza with her 7-year-old daughter Gabriella today. Her MP Tulip Sadiq shared the picture and said that Nazanin had missed the everyday moments during her detention in Iran. And the Duchess of Sussex's first podcast will be launched this summer on Spotify after she and Prince Harry raised concerns about COVID-19 misinformation with the streaming platform. The couple signed a deal for an estimated £18 million in 2020. The final stage of a new parliamentary bill has been described as a momentous day for the deaf community. The legislation will give British Sign Language legal recognition for the very first time. It means organisations will have to provide more interpreters and signers than ever before. And as Martha Ferry explains, it will help make more deaf people feel fully part of society.
Their children can hear the music at Boppin' Tots.
But this is what life sounds like to profoundly deaf parents Philippa and Stephen Wynne. They use British Sign Language, but face everyday barriers. When Liam and Diana start school, it's not clear how things will work.
Thanks, my darling. The whole bundle. I need to untie my little rope. Let's get my rope out. Well done. Hold on to me. Hold down for me. So I can just untie it. You haven't been getting it. I'm going to give you one white label and just kiss it. Thanks, darling. Well done, sweetheart. I'm still alive.
At home in Bromley, BSL is how the whole family communicate. When the children were born, they had interpreters on standby, but for a medical emergency, there wasn't the same support. But that's not unusual. 8 out of 10 patients have had a health appointment where their communication needs weren't met, according to a survey by the Sign Health charity.
So how difficult would it be to make the changes that deaf people need?
It has gone through unopposed.
And as the bill passed the Commons, there were celebrations in Trafalgar Square. This is a momentous day for the deaf community, but they know a change in the law will only be the start. Deaf people spend much of their time finding ways to adapt to a hearing world. They hope the bill will make public services more inclusive and encourage a sign language revolution in schools, businesses and everyday life. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
Hundreds of people have celebrated the life of Jerry Marsden at his memorial service at Liverpool's Anglican Cathedral. The church choir sang the Liverpool Football Club anthem, You'll Never Walk Alone, which he got to #1 with his band, Jerry and the Pacemakers. He died in January last year at the age of 78. Jerry's family waited until COVID restrictions were eased to allow fans to celebrate his life. Among those paying tribute were Liverpool legends Sir Kenny Dalglish and Jamie Carragher. Now, some of the world's richest people are said to be among the bidders hoping to buy Chelsea Football Club. The deadline for application is in less than 2 hours. It comes as the club is feeling the impact of tough sanctions made against current owner Roman Abramovich. Our reporter Dan Salisbury-Jones is at Stamford Bridge for us tonight. And Dan, everyone at the club, I'm sure, we're hoping that this will all be sorted quickly.
Oh, yeah, just a bit, Charlene. As you say, that deadline fast approaching tonight. We've heard from multimillionaires, billionaires from America, the Middle East and the UK. Lord Sebastian Coe even is among a consortium. He is a Chelsea fan looking to invest in the club. Now, this will not simply go to the highest bidder. This is also about what added value a new owner could bring to the football club. I think fans will welcome that, but they will want this done quickly, and that is a sentiment that will be echoed and has been echoed today by the manager, Thomas Tuchel.
There's like a sale of the club. We hope we will find a new owner soon, because this will calm the situation down. This will give us clarity, and clarity is always good.
Well, his side faced Middlesbrough in the FA Cup this weekend. The travel arrangements for that have been sorted, but they've drawn Real Madrid in the next round of the Champions League. How are they going to get to Madrid? Are they going to have any fans at Stamford Bridge for the home leg? Chelsea have been lobbying very hard to be allowed to sell tickets again because they are losing so much money. Tonight, this football club is in limbo.
All right, Dan, thanks very much. Emmerdale is coming up in less than 15 minutes' time, but still to come before that.
Any ideas?
Lviv. Ternopil. Mykolaiv.
The Manchester community looking for a Ukrainian city to couple with.
And temperatures could reach the high teens next week. But don't get excited just yet. I'll have a full forecast.
I'm excited. Join me and Alex for that after the break.
Who's the boss? I'm the boss.
Nah, I'm the boss. Yeah, but I'm still the boss.
Making tax digital. Bring it on. Tax tackled.
VAT cracked.
I like the way you move.
You Move, joint supplements for dogs and their owners. Try for a month for just £5.
Oh, those early winter morning starts. Feel your pain, Simon.
Ooh, Alpro in your breakfast. Good for you.
Keep it up, Simon. Ah, don't worry about her. Come on, Simon. Yes! That's a plant-based victory right there.
Alpro, good for you.
This was a real test, pushing EE full fibre to the limit.
Hi, this is Cambridge Airport, over your EE router. Video feeds, the data feeds, all of this is real time.
Step 1 Alpha Air Suburbia up, so you're on frequency.
Step 1 Alpha, maintaining 3,000 feet, heading 050 degrees.
Runway 23 available for landing.
Completed Step 1 Alpha.
Somebody wants to say hello.
Congratulations, everybody. Well done.
I can't believe we just landed a plane.
This is broadband that can handle anything. This is full fibre from EE.
The quarterfinals of the FA Cup.
Well, there's your surprise.
So it's the FA Cup, and you never know. That's fabulous. Sighs of relief. Superb finish. It's not over.
The FA Cup quarterfinals live on ITV or stream live on ITV Hub.
Hello again, welcome back. Now, many of us have been enjoying some gloriously sunny weather, but the question is, Alex, can I get my barbecue out this weekend?
Well, first things first, I'm in everyone's good books at the moment. Can you get your barbecue out? Do you know what? I think if you're away from the south coast, and actually, funny enough, it's kind of a reversal in fortunes. It's actually northern parts that are going to see the warmer temperatures as we head into tomorrow. So I think there, you could probably get your barbecue out.
But I've heard it could last for about 10 days or so, is that right?
Ooh, 10 days could be pushing it, but I think the signs are that into the middle part of next week, things are looking pretty fair and temperatures are set to rise quite a few degrees above average. But before we get to next week, why don't we celebrate the conditions today? They're certainly worth shouting about. This was Blackpool earlier today. You can see a few people out certainly enjoying the fine weather. Didn't see anybody in the sea, but look how lovely and flat it looks at the moment. But as we head further south, Frensham Ponds in Hampshire, well, they were a lot braver there. This family taking a quick dip in the water. It certainly isn't weather for ducks, but even they were out enjoying the spring-like rays of sunshine. But if you are going to be out and about for long periods of time, certainly tomorrow, and you may have been out and about today for a good few hours, just bear in mind that UV levels are moderate at the moment. That is still strong enough to cause some skin damage. It's going to be a similar picture as we head into tomorrow. So it will be worth thinking about just whacking on some sun cream if you are going to be heading out and enjoying the fine weather. As I say, it's going to be a pretty fine day tomorrow, but slight fly in the ointment is as we head towards Sunday, it's going to be colder temporarily.
But it is going to get slightly better after that, isn't it?
Yes, so there is talk that as we head into next week, by Wednesday, maybe 19 or 20 degrees. Right, let's take a look at the forecast.
Today we'll see warmer temperatures moving in from the east, especially around tea time. Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
OK, so let's take a look at the forecast as we head into this weekend. And we'll start with the air mass chart, which is, well, pretty nice at the moment. You can see that warmer air feeding up from the south. But I mentioned a slight blip in the script as we head towards Sunday. We're going to get a colder air mass feeding over the UK. So temperatures are going to be whacked back down to 10 or 11 degrees Celsius, which actually is around average for the time of year. But as we fast forward through Monday into Tuesday, those temperatures look like they will be touching 19, maybe 20 degrees by the time we get to Wednesday. But as for tonight, a fairly chilly night to come with clearer skies over much of the UK. That's going to drag our nighttime temperature down into single figures. Rarely it will be that bit colder, perhaps cold enough for a touch of frost in places. So wake up tomorrow morning on Saturday. If you are going to be off out early, you might need an extra layer. It's going to be a rather chilly start to the day, but it won't be long before we see those temperatures start to recover and rise quite nicely. So as we head into the afternoon, we are looking at highs of around 16, but 17 degrees Celsius possible up towards the northwest there. And that's because we've got a bit more of a breeze down towards the south, but up towards the north, it's more of an offshore breeze. So probably feeling a touch more pleasant there. As for Sunday, still a bright day, but with that colder air mass over much of the UK, a much colder feel. So you are going to need to wrap up then. But let's take a look at the outlook, which is looking pretty good. As I mentioned, things are set to warm up as we head through the course of the weekend into next week. As I say, by Tuesday, possibly 19 degrees Celsius with largely sunny skies.
Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
So things to look out for are Tuesday and Wednesday, right?
Yeah, Tuesday and Wednesday looking pretty warm across the UK. But as I say, worth bearing in mind that those UV levels are going to be moderate. So particularly if you're fair-skinned, you could burn fairly easily.
All right, thanks very much, Alex. And finally tonight, the city of Manchester has for many years enjoyed close ties with St. Petersburg in Russia. There have been cultural exchanges, charity fundraising and commemorative events during World War II. But the current war in Europe has forced a rethink, and some of the youngest members of Manchester's Ukrainian community told Sangeeta Lal what should be done instead.
A comforting routine at the most unsettling time. Children here coming to terms with what's happening in a country they also call home.
Well, obviously Russia's trying to take Ukraine's land and take control of them, and yeah, they just want the power to control. Like in the past, like they're a whole country. Russia and Ukraine, they're a whole country, but Ukraine doesn't want it. Like no.
Putin is basically just starting war because he wants land from Ukraine, and he just, he wants power basically.
And how do you feel about it?
You feel really upset and worried because most of your family's there.
The community here is trying to show children Manchester stands with them and to drop its current friendship links with Russia, instead calling for the city to be twinned with one in Ukraine.
Any ideas?
Lviv. Ternopil. Mykolaiv.
It is perhaps a simple gesture, but one that matters when families feel so far away.
I think it just gives them that comfort and that link that the city that they're living in is supporting, their cause here.
Processing the realities of war threatens their innocence with each day that passes, but for some, there's still a belief happier times will come.
The people that are left, they will remake the whole city, the whole land, and everything will be like normal.
Hope in a new generation exposed to war, understanding it in their own way. Sangeeta Lal, ITV News, Manchester.
Well, it's almost time for us to leave you, but before we go, let's check in on Julie to take a look at what's coming up on news at 10 tonight. So, Julie, what will you have for us?
Hi, Charlene. Well, we'll have analysis of what emerged today from that phone call about Ukraine between President Biden and President Xi of China. And we will be hearing from Ukrainian children as they settle into their new schools in Poland. All that and more, of course. We'll see you at 10.
Brilliant. We'll catch you then at 10 o'clock. Thanks very much, Julie. But that's it from us for now. Emmerdale, of course, will be up for you next. But for me and the rest of the team in Ukraine, you have a wonderful evening and have an even better weekend. Bye-bye.